This is Patrick from WSOU 89.5 FM, the loudest rock. And today I'm here with Steve Vai. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm good. So right now you have an album out, Vai Gash. Now this album explores a little bit different side of your sound. Instead of being super full of shred and solo musical mastery stuff, this album was made so you'd have some music to listen to while riding on your Harley. What can you tell us about your relationship with motorcycle culture and the music?
Well, it's interesting because when I was a kid, I was a teenager in the 70s, so I was really into the classic rock like Led Zeppelin and all the Deep Purple and Queen, all that great music. But I was also really into the motorcycle culture. When I was a kid, even like 12, 13, 14 years old, I was building mini bikes and motorbikes and go-karts and that kind of thing. I could never really afford a real motorcycle. My brother had a Harley, and he hung out with all these bikers, and they were a great group of guys. They were tough. They partied hard. And I used to actually play at their parties with my rock band at the time. But I could never afford a Harley, but I used to steal my brother's every now and then. It was a big giant chopper. And I just really always loved that feeling of being on a motorcycle. People who that resonates with will tell you of just the experience of riding, being in the wind and having all that power under you and being with your friends. It's very freeing, very liberating, and very, very kind of joyful and empowering. And I loved that. But, I was primarily a musician and I spent most of my time doing that. But when I finally moved out to California, saved up some money, I could afford a Harley. I bought 7 of them. My guilty pleasure. Was never really into cars or exotic old guitars or anything, but I was into studio gear and Harleys. And while I was out there, when I started, this was probably around mid to late 80s when I re-entered the biker culture. And I had a very good friend, Johnny Gash Sombrotto. Johnny was from New York, Queens, total East Coast, tough Italian biker kind of a guy, total sweetheart, crazy, funny, charismatic beyond, and he got the nickname Gash because when he was 21, he was riding his motorcycle along these power lines and he got lost. And he climbed this tower, one of those electrical towers. And while he was up there, the electricity arced and it went through his body. And it just fried him, and he fell 30 feet onto a barbed wire fence and caught fire, and he suffered 3rd-degree burns over 60% of his body. And it was just miraculous that he even survived. And eventually he moved out to California and we started riding. We had this great club of people and we'd just go on all these fantastic rides. And this was like probably in 1991. I was starting work on my next project, and I was, I hadn't really started to get into it. And it's not uncommon at times when I'm in the middle of one project, I just get this pull, to just drop everything and go do something else, because you just get inspired. And we were out riding, and I just realized, because I had this big Harley with speakers and everything, the music we were listening to was great, but it wasn't the kind of music I wanted to hear. I'm a musician and I love bike riding, and I just wanted to just stop everything I was doing and jump in the studio and record a handful of songs that I felt captured that feeling of what it felt like to ride, and what kind of music would be great to listen to. So I thought, straight ahead rock record, total classic 70s. I love the 70s rock, 80s, And I wanted it to be very straight ahead, no frills, no exotic guitar solos to show you how great I am. I mean, there's enough of that, I guess, in other records. And my normal way of recording and all can be very complex. That a lot of the music I do can be very produced, very compositional. I got one side of my brain is into high information music, and the other side is into like just the Gash record. Because it's a very authentic offering from my you know psyche, so to speak. I really love that music, and it's so fun to play. I mean, I just started playing it yesterday. I was just blowing through some songs. I'm going, my goodness, this is so easy and fun. What have I done my whole career? But we really, so I went into the studio. I blasted this stuff out in like about a week. It was just like stream of consciousness. And the whole time I was just focusing on that feeling. And I tried recording vocals myself, but it didn't really work because I'm not a rock singer like what those songs need. And I didn't even know that Gash could sing. I don't even think he knew because he wasn't a professional singer. He had a beautiful kind of crooner Frank Sinatra voice. He used to like fake Frank Sinatra, and he sounded really great. But I would hear him like scream which he did a lot. He was this. It's so hard to explain what he was like. He was totally unpredictable and would do insane things, like really crazy things. And it was a pain sometimes because he was so unpredictable, but incredibly funny and charming and charismatic in ways that you had to know him. It was just such a warm, crazy presence. But I would hear him like yell or something, or like throw out a Led Zeppelin line, and I just think, what is that? There's something in there. So I pulled him into the studio to see what would happen, and I could not believe what came out of his mouth. I mean, it just sounded so authentic and committed and connected, like he totally owned it. And I was like, oh my God, and I made so I would give him the tracks with my guide vocal on it, and he would learn that, or we'd be in the studio and I'd just tell him what to do. And we had a great time, and he just laid this stuff out, and we had the music and we were listening to it and enjoying it on our rides. And of course, the idea of releasing it crossed my mind, but I just didn't. I had too many obstacles in the way at the time. One of them, grunge was coming in. It was 91, and anything that resembled 70s, 80s rock was like the devil. It just got destroyed. The record would have just probably been buried, and it was too precious to me. I really liked this record differently than my other records because it happened so quick, and it felt so good, and it represented a time and experiences with people that I loved. And I didn't want to throw it to the wolves, and I didn't want to have to try to sell it, because that's one of the things you have to do when you release a product. You got to go out there and try to convince people it's something they'll like. And, I just didn't feel that for this. And also I was in the middle of some contractual obligations to complete other records. So I kind of put it on the shelf for a little while and was planning on getting back to it within a couple of years. And because I only had 8 songs and they were demoed basically. And I thought, well, I got to get in there. I got to tweak them. I got to fix some stuff and get some more songs. One of the songs I wrote with Nikki Sixx, and that's New Generation. But tragically, Gash was killed in a motorcycle accident, and I had to just put the whole thing on the shelf for 32 years. And through the years, I started listening to it probably about 20 years ago, and I just really liked it. And I thought, I I got to release it, but I need to tweak it and fix a few things and try to figure out a way to get another song on there, maybe an instrumental or something, because I had no more Gash, you know. And that went on for 20 years, you know, and then finally I realized, no, I'm leaving it exactly the way I left it 32 years ago. And I went and I got the tapes, which were sitting on the shelf for 32 years, and they needed to be baked because after a while, magnetic tape, the adhesive that holds the particles starts to separate, and you can't play it. It shreds. So there's a process in that you bake the tape. It's like 130 degrees for like 6 hours or something, and it adheres the particles back to the, and you can play the tape. Not for very long, but you can play it. And that's what I did. And then I sent it all to Mike Frazier, who's an excellent mixer, and he mixed the record, and I got it back, and I'm like, there it is.
Yeah, it all sounds amazing. And want to talk about some of the songs individually because I think they're all really cool. They all kind of got something unique going on. So you just mentioned New Generation, which you wrote with Nikki Sixx, got a very classic rock sort of feel to it, jam packed with a lot of riffs. What particular music do you think influenced the writing of this song?
Well, yeah, when I got together with Nikki, it must have been 1990 or around there sometime, and we were friends. You know, we hung out occasionally, and you know, in the music business, you go, hey, why don't we get together and write some songs sometime? And sometimes it happens, and it happened, and we had this song, and you know, it's hard for me to remember everything, but I think he came in with most of the lyrics and the main riff, you know, and then we kind of just put it together from there. And then I demoed it. And at that time that I demoed it, I knew he could sing. I knew that Johnny can sing. So I put him on it. And because it was the one of 8 songs that I had with Gash on it, I wanted to release it with the record. But the song sounds very sort of like something that Nikki Sixx might kind of come up with if he met with Steve Vai working on rock music that was relatively a product of that time, looking back to the past, you know, because that song basically depicts different periods, but it was done 30 years ago. So it's kind of one of those things.
Woman Fever is another interesting one for me because I could hear a lot of blues in it, particularly in the soloing. And blues is not something a lot of people think of when they think Steve Vai. What impact did the blues have on your playing? Because it definitely impacted classic rock, but on you in particular.
Well, when you're a guitar player and you're starting out, one of the first things you learn is the blues scale. And it's a very simple kind of a scale that once you play it, oh, you sound like a blues player, you know. When I was young, I wasn't a huge fan of the blues. You know, I was more, you know, when I was 12, 13, 14, you know, I mean, it was okay, but it just, I was more into high energy rock, you know, and very complex type classical music and all sorts of things, fusion, taste the jazz. Um, I listen to classical, I listen to all this stuff, but my instincts as a musician, as a player, always gravitated towards the quirky, you know, and the blues scale was at the foundation of everything that I do. I mean, I just move it around to sound modal, but my awareness on the neck of the guitar is based on the blues scale all over the place. It doesn't so much sound like blues, and I never really felt very good at being authentically blues. You know, that when you hear a blues player, it's like, okay, you're in the blues club, so these notes and this feel and this kind of thing is the prerequisite. And I was never comfortable with any kinds of parameters. You know, I just thought, nah. mostly because I couldn't do them. I couldn't stay within them. I wasn't good enough really to be a great blues player or a great jazz player. I couldn't. I I wasn't comfortable sounding authentic in those styles because they were styles that already existed. And I don't know what it was. I don't know what a 12-year-old thinks like that. I don't want to play the blues because everybody's doing it and it's too simple. But the blues scale, yeah, I'll take that. That's rock and roll. So, of course, later on, I discovered real blues. When I found John Lee Hooker and Blind Willie Johnson. I mean that and the record of American folk music from the Smithsonian Institute. I mean, those were like real blues. And then I started seeing how contemporary blues guitar players, navigate. But so much of it is superficial. It's I know this scale and I know how to bend notes and I know how to fake that I'm feeling it. And that's fine. That's what most players do. I do. That's how I was learning. But to be really authentic with it in a contemporary way so that it moves, resonates with me, that's rare. I don't see it very often. Um, but something like Woman Fever, it is a kickback to blues in the sense that it's blues rock and it's got a blues progression. And I do like some bluesy things, I do like that, but I would never consider myself an authentic blues player. But that song is one of my favorite songs on the record, and because of Johnny. You'd have to know him. It's so quirky. I mean, he was playful. He didn't take himself seriously. He was not ever a professional rock singer, so he never entered that arena to see what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, who sounds good that you should follow in order to be accepted. He did none of that. He just went in blind and gave himself. And in Woman Fever, there's so many funny little things that he does and says that are so him. Because when I listen to this record, frankly, it's not about Steve Vai. I wanted the songs, the melodies, the energy to be the thing that was inspiring for people. And I just lucked out with Gash because he makes the whole thing just his personality, his charisma, his swagger. That song has so much cheeky swagger.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to describe it. And yeah, I definitely agree. When I was listening to the album, I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm not just focused on Steve Vai, I'm focused on the whole thing, which is you and Gash's vocals. What else is special about John's vocal style as it relates to your guitar playing that you think makes it work so well on this record?
Well, in the 80s, I was very fortunate. I played with a handful of really good big rock bands. So, for instance, when I was with David Lee Roth, that was 80s style rock and roll, but it was very West Coast, California rock. I mean, that's very David Lee Roth's all about California. So that infuses itself into the music, and you get this rock music that has a West Coast feel. The Gash record is as East Coast as you can get. I'm from the East Coast. I'm a New York guy. Gash was as New York to the bone as you can imagine. And that you can hear it. You can hear his accent, his New York accent. You can hear that tough Italian street sound. I mean, he was the antithesis of West Coast. I mean, he was bald. His ear was totally burnt off. He had a beard. He was covered in scars. That's how he got the name Gash. I mean, you look at the album cover, and he was a tough biker. So that's very different. And you can hear it. So yeah, it's an 80s style record. And sure, this song sounds like it could have been on Eat 'em and Smile, but no. Gash was, he didn't know how to do anything else but be entirely himself. No pretension, no placating a genre or a radio station or a record company, nothing. He just was free and open.
Yeah, I definitely hear all that on this album. Vai Gash out now. Go stream it, download it, get the CD, whatever you got to do. Steve, is there anything else you want to add today?
Well, when you think about an artist like myself, you think, oh, crazy, brilliant, kind of can't listen to that music. I get it. It's all right. I mean, it's good music. I like it. And fortunate for me, I found an audience. But this record is different. It really, you have to turn, if you're a Vai fan, you might, you'll definitely find some exciting type of guitar playing, but really this record transcends Steve Vai as a guitar player, artist, whatever. I'm a contributor. Well, I built the entire thing, hook, line, and sinker, but it's geared towards listening pleasure, for people that love that old kind of 70s, 80s straight ahead rock, but it sounds good now because it was recorded well, and also it's got melody. It has uplifting, good feeling, empowering melody, and for that, you give it a chance. I think you get a kick out of it.
Yeah, definitely give it a chance. Vai Gash out now. Steve, thank you so much. This is Patrick, WSOU 89.5.
Thank you, Patrick. Bye bye.